Hello, team. Welcome back to another Line Warcast. Here is your map. It's one big landmass, kind of in a little bit of surrounded by water. I guess that's the description. There are three trade routes on the back right side. Our two players today are Haako, who is in blue, and proshelest, who will be in red. I don't know if I've butchered proshelest's name. Forgive me if I have, but that's where we're going with it. Hako's in the top left here. Not really sure where proshelest is going to go real quick. We can see proshelest is spawning in the bottom right side of the map. Immediately puts down a barracks. Kind of important. This is just a lot of barracks. This is 5 barracks, and I love it. This is absolutely the way that I enjoy playing after the patch. Hako's vision, neither player can see each other, of course. We've just turned off the fog of war. But 5 barracks immediately out of proshelest. Infantry in the new patch, it's in fact 6 barracks. I love this. 6 barracks. Infantry go a little bit quicker in this new patch that released last week as of the writing of the making of this video. 2 airport barracks, both airports making helicopters for Haako. We can see all the lines, both players sort of spreading out. I mean, Hako's going in like both the north and southern directions, and then of course proshelest is going to go kind of just top left, I guess. Another barracks, and this isn't. Proshelest is going to have a lot of infantry by the time that they identify that Hako's in the top left. Haako, what we just heard, is a factory, and I think I heard an industry. Yes, we did. We heard the mooing of the cows. Clearly, it's got to be a farm that Haako is going for. So this is a good economic play from Haako. Generally, these industry, it takes about 7.5 minutes for them to make your money back. And I mean, this is far enough that Haako is definitely going to have that time. It's 2 minutes into the game. I mean, contact probably is going to be made at like 4 minutes, I guess, 5 or so. And then by that point, you're almost at that break-even point. 2 helicopters immediately. I wonder if Haako is going to take these helicopters off the airport quickly to start scouting. And we can check the income. Haako's at 332. Proshelest is also at 332, but in theory, Proshelest should be able to cap more because there's more infantry. They're the most cost-efficient unit in the game to be capping with. So it's now 7 barracks. Now, Haako's in a more central location and gets to expand in multiple directions, but there is a bunch of mountains and forests here to the north, and that really makes it so that your infantry move a lot slower. We can see in this tooltip that there's a speed penalty as units go through mountains and forests. So Haako isn't going to be able to expand as quick, and there's 2 barracks, right? So like less units. It's in fact a commando right away. I like this from Haako. There's a lot of they're like these mountains that we're talking about. It allows commandos to get a little bit like slippery through the mountains and probably do a great job of scouting. I guess Proshelest does have a gas down here. This is really the only gas that Proshelest has, and Haako has this one in the forest and then these 2 on the side. Haako going for more economy. That again will kick in a few minutes, and we'll see what the economies are. Proshelest at 392. Haako is just broken 400. Haako's got an interceptor. I mean, it seems like a relatively common pairing of like helicopters and interceptors. This is a striker out of the left airport for Haako. So kind of an eclectic mix of air units, and still no further tech from Proshelest, just a bunch of barracks. And I still like this. I mean, if you look at both players' vision, I mean, Haako doesn't see Proshelest, and it, I mean, by that logic, Proshelest doesn't see Haako either. Doesn't see like any of those territories that are blue are turning blue. Artillery piece from Haako. I wonder what the follow-up's going to be, if it's just going to keep being artillery. It is. We can see that there's a circle that would group tanks together right here. So I don't know if Haako is planning on making tanks or what that's about. But the game is about to change in a second as both players notice and find out where each other are. I mean, by this point, it's kind of maybe not obvious, but you can probably guess where the opponent is now that Haako, clearly nothing's in the north because Haako hasn't seen any red. And for Proshelest, Haako has to be in the north of the map, right? Like maybe to the left here, but by this point, Haako would have already expanded to get close enough. Haako's first gas is going down. There's going to be 4 helicopters, 2 strikers, and an interceptor. We'll see how that all gets used. And I would expect that proshelest might be catching up. 554 versus 524 for Haako. So a little bit of a lead. These industry I don't think are taking effect yet on that. I mean, look at how much infantry that proshelest has. This is that 7 barracks opener, folks. This is a lot of stuff. And first contact is about to be made. I mean, now you can see proshelest sees that Haako is here, immediately drops down a factory. That's good. I mean, that's the first factory proshelest has. And here comes this interceptor to scout. I guess it really is to scout, this interceptor. Kind of an interesting use of a retreat line by Haako, and it does exactly what it needs to do, which is get eyes on what proshelest is coming with here, and how far proshelest has been able to get. So that's the vision that interceptor gets. It has extra detection as a unit. Submarines, commandos, and interceptors, I might be wrong. I believe those are the units that have increased detection of stealth units, like into forests and mountains. The first factory from proshelest is definitely a good call, because there's really no tech for proshelest. I mean, Haako has a bunch of helicopters, an interceptor, and a striker, as we've already discussed. These helicopters are going to do a ton of damage. They recently, in this patch, took a 20% damage reduction. Their missiles, specifically, against commandos and infantry. So the machine guns that the helicopters are firing are still very good against the infantry. It's just the missiles are a little bit weaker. 2 more barracks from Haako. I generally like this. I think that infantry, you know, you can fight infantry with infantry. And just in general, for, I mean, if when Haako sees this many infantry with these helicopters, you have to know there's a gazillion barracks somewhere. Another factory for proshelest. This is definitely the play. You want to have some beef with the army, especially as contacts being made, and certainly without an airport for proshelest, you have to be able to defend the SAMs. Like, you have to, pardon me, you have to be able to get SAMs to defend from all this air tech that your opponent has. And that's why the SAMs out of the factory right away. It's a good pullback, I think, from proshelest. Maybe going to the north, but I mean, hindsight's 2020. It's just because this might be decent. The strikers would be able to harass these infantry, but it might be worth trying to get some territory. 668 income for proshelest and 760 for Haako, and that's why it kind of feels like proshelest has to start taking away from Haako. I mean, Hako's been able to get 2 industry, nothing further on that development, but a lot of back capping. Second gas for Haako. And 4 barracks, 1 factory really is what's going on with for Haako right now. I mean, 100 income is a big deal. This artillery in the center is going to become a problem, because artillery, although it's been nerfed since last patch last week, it's still very, very good at ground pound, and especially against infantry. You can see exactly how well helicopters do. I think 4 helicopters is such a great number of helicopters. There's now almost 3 strikers, a transport jet, and 1 more helicopter on the way for Haako. This is so much infantry for proshelest, and I love it, but unfortunately, when all this infantry isn't really capping anything, it's just wasted upkeep. In the sense that, I mean, all these units cost something for proshelest to have. I mean, let's look at the income. So 704 for proshelest and 854 for Haako. Hako's making 360 a minute, and that's where the big difference is because proshelest is making about half as much per minute. I actually really like that proshelest takes a fight here. There are 5 pieces of artillery with 1, hopefully some more SAMs coming in quick. The helicopters might not be able to do as much, and this is just a pure numbers game. I mean, these artillery obviously know they have to back up, and that's why Haako is retreat moving them. We can see that blue line command, because look at how many infantry this is. It's actually such a ridiculous amount of infantry. It's a great push from proshelest there. And expanding in the bottom as this goes on, still economically, pardon me, it's not looking great for proshelest. This is, I guess, looking great for proshelest. This is our first DC that we've seen in a replay. So what happens here? What are the lines that Haako's got? Okay, so Haako is presumably back. Yeah, here we go. So it's strikers and interceptors being launched from Haako, and these helicopters do a great amount of damage. Great pickup from proshelest in the north here with the artillery, because there must be 4 artillery pieces that proshelest was able to kill. And here's a drop. This transport ship in the top, this could be huge. Just because if commandos get behind lines and get super sticky and slippery, pardon me, like, it's hard for proshelest to be able to defend this. Proshelest still doesn't have an airport, by the way, so it's not like proshelest can just launch a bunch of strikers at those commandos within Interceptor and be able to clean it up, or at least keep eyes on it. It really has to become a thing of grouping up units. So hopefully proshelest saw that, otherwise those commandos are going to be able to get at least 1 production facility. 2 commandos will take that down very quickly. 986 income for Haako, 776 for proshelest. Haako, by the way, is a very highly rated player on ladder. I'm not exactly sure what proshelest's rank is, but I mean, Haako is like top 15 for sure, I believe. So I mean, I really like that this is a grouping of factories here for proshelest, because it's a great, you generally want to like group the buildings together so that these like commandos, for example, here would be less effective on these buildings than they are over here when the buildings are kind of spaced out. So having like 4 factories there to provide a bunch of the meat of this army for proshelest, I think is a really smart call. These helicopters are getting great value just because Haako's controlling them very well outside the range of the SAMs. And really, I'm interested to see what Haako's doing behind this. Here come the SAMs from proshelest to try to push this back. So tanks finally from Haako. These are going to be devastating if they can get around this forest, because tanks are great in open areas when they get around the army. Before this starts popping off, we'll just see what the commandos are doing. This is enormous. Those 2 barracks are probably going to go down, really. And this is still a great push from proshelest. I mean, proshelest has to put on a lot of the pressure here because the economy is in such like rough shape. Unfortunately for proshelest, Haako's been able to get like this left or right side of the map, pardon me, and cut proshelest off from being able to push to the north. Huge picks on the helicopters, and my apologies, I may have lost all of them. I didn't realize the SAMs would, no, okay, so here they are, like 3 helicopters down in the bottom still. So I think the SAMs must have got 2 helicopters. SAMs are very good against helicopters. They always have been, but with the extra 1 range that these SAMs get on their missiles, really helps with helicopters in particular for them to pick off, like get that last shot and that last hit. Another barracks from proshelest, and I love that there's economy behind this. But Haako certainly has a ton of money. I mean, over 1,100, 700 in the bank, making 400 minerals, going back to StarCraft 2. Money per minute. proshelest at 848. And now this production of Haako is gonna, I mean, finally Haako's backed up to the production facilities, but as long as they don't lose any buildings, it's gonna be okay. This is great advancement from proshelest to get the bottom left side. These helicopters are being annoying by picking off reinforcements, and these 4 tanks could be huge. We can see what Haako's going for behind this in the 3 factories, and it is just more tanks. With 2 gas, this is definitely enough to sustain this and launching any planes that Haako wants. I'd assume maybe even an airstrip at some point would come out here, because these airports are pretty much done making planes. The one on the left, we can see like the last striker is already made, and so that airport's actually not building anything. 4, well, I mean, I guess it's 3 barracks here from Haako. I love this because Haako knows that this is all just infantry down here in the bottom. So to just make a bunch of infantry yourself to be able to push down through this open field and really seal the game, I think that's the play. And the tanks are going all the way down to the outside. In the open field, they're going to get around all this infantry. It's a good pullback from proshelest, because really the only thing that proshelest can do is almost like defend in these forests, stop these commando drops, and defend these tanks. So one barracks went down. The other barracks was defended. No, actually, I think there must have been 2 barracks here or something. Town for proshelest, love it. It's kind of a thing of maybe too little, too late. Let's look at the money. 1106 for Haako, 966 for proshelest. That's actually not even that bad. It's still, to use the famous quote, it's not ideal. Almost workable. If these tanks could be defended, these commandos could get cleaned up. I mean, proshelest could have a game here. But I think these tanks are going to do a lot of damage. I don't even think they're haste commanded right now. They could go a lot quicker, although Haako's gas consumption is pretty up there. These commandos live. There's 3 of them. That is tons. That is enough to do a lot of damage. And one of the problems is as proshelest pulls these units back to deal with the tanks, Haako's going to be getting great trades, or better trades, on the front line. And ultimately be able to overpower this with a better economy. I mean, personally, I like the patch. Or rather, I think it's a good step in the right direction, as they say, because I love infantry. I love playing with infantry. These tanks are just going to ruin them. I mean, we can see what Haako sees here. None of the production facilities in the forest. The tanks don't have vision and don't have detection on that, but they're going to just clean up. I mean, one artillery piece and 3 infantry. The tanks can pretty much A-move that. Let's see if there's any more development on the rest of the map. It doesn't look like it. These commandos are really struggling to break through. And the tanks, I mean, tanks can take this on in a lot of ways. Like, they're going to be able to, I mean, now that there's actually like 6 artillery pieces around them and they're going to get body blocked so hard here. Oh, this doesn't feel good. Yeah, there's no, I mean, these tanks are still going to do a lot of damage, but there's no way they're going to get out of this. Maybe I lied. 5 tanks is pretty strong. I mean, it's just artillery, I guess. But I mean, they're going to get 1 production facility or something. But it's really, this is the big push, and this is the main fight. 2 barracks in the top for Haako. I mean, ultimately, Haako just needs to not lose every production facility here, and Haako's economy is going to kick in, and they will win the game. 4 tanks can take a lot of damage. This is a good move to target this factory, to try to get out of there. I mean, it's not ideal. Like, the tanks can take the damage from all the artillery and the units, but it's always better if they're just, picking off buildings on the corner of your opponent's base, and then to jet out of here is a really good exit plan once they kill that building. I think ultimately, production-wise, I mean, look at how many barracks Haako has. In one big line on the front, and it's just going to be a slow push through these fields. This many tanks is going to crush. 1264 income for Haako. And 1k for proshelest. So 18 minutes into the game, 200. I mean, this is tough. This is going to be a tough comeback for proshelest here. And with these strikers, I mean, this is going to be even more difficult, especially... I mean, if proshelest can get some SAMs in good positions and take out strikers like this and not let them get good trades, it could be a turning point. I love that there's more grouping of buildings here. I mean, this is why buildings get grouped up like this, because it's easier to defend all of them with just a group of SAMs. And as SAMs pop out here, they'll be able to help. It's just unfortunate that there's been like a lull in SAM production for proshelest, and all the SAMs are actually at the front fighting tanks, which is a tough job. Is there anything going on for proshelest? This is gonna almost be a numbers mismatch in Haako's favor. Sniping an airfield would be, or an airstrip, pardon me, would be really great. Unfortunately, losing all these SAMs is tough for proshelest, because one of the things we've learned, that we've been told, in fact, in chat, shout out to chat, is you want to be able to build your SAMs and then stop building SAMs. That sounds very silly, but like every time you build a SAM, you're not building a tank or an artillery piece. So if you can keep like a battery of SAMs or 2 battery of SAMs and then just switch entirely to artillery, tanks, whatever you need, it's always going to be better. And I mean, I know that when I play the game, I lose SAMs all the time. Lose way too many SAMs. Would love to see if proshelest can take out that airstrip. That would be pretty big. I mean, there are like 5 planes there, and all those planes, if they have nowhere to land, would just explode if that airstrip were to be killed. This is a sweet push by proshelest. I mean, there's a good amount of artillery here, and if there can be enough SAMs, I mean, arty SAM is still a thing in this game. It's just the way that players get there is different, and it doesn't always end there, from my experience. 1086 income for proshelest, 1204 for Haako. So, I mean, proshelest is making stuff work. You know, they're making it happen in the middle here. This is a lot of artillery. There's good econ from Haako. Yeah, missile from Haako. This is very far forward, or this feels like very far forward. Can proshelest even see this, potentially? I mean, in time, proshelest might even be able to see this. I mean, it's right here. Missile pads have stealth. They have a stealth element to them. So I'm not exactly sure how close proshelest has to get and with what units. But, I mean, the economy, I mean, this isn't too bad to be 100 behind your opponent. This is unfortunate for proshelest. If there was, like, more grouping, maybe this push would work. But certainly they're kind of, these units are kind of running in 1 or 2 at a time and getting owned by the big bluff from Haako. This is great. I don't know, besides the nuke, what Haako has to deal with this. We heard this chainsaw, that's industry from, yeah, right here, from proshelest, this little lumber camp, so that was going to give proshelest money over time. Haako's down to just making 9 a minute, so Haako in some sense is broke, in the sense that all the production that Haako has is costing so much that the territories no longer give enough income in all the industry. Terrible description of what's happened, but either way, like, proshelest is making more money and is catching up very quickly. These tanks are going to be enormous for Haako. That's another factory from proshelest. And it's right here. But if these tanks, I mean, these tanks could even just start capping in the back, but if they could get into the forest and the proshelest isn't ready for it, that could be very devastating. Haako's building another gas very close. I mean, these are very close, but if Haako can defend all this, it's all good. The buzzing that we hear is Haako's gas. I cannot imagine that this is a comfortable feeling for Haako, although Haako I still think is in a very commanding position. These tanks are going to be big as long as the gas can get back up. And on the left side of the map, there is a lot of infantry that's starting to take the economy away from proshelest. And here comes the push. So let's see if these SAMs from proshelest can be in a good position. I group up here and be able to push. It's a good amount of artillery. It's a great bunch of factories that proshelest has set up here. Haako still has a lot of economy. That's the commentary right now. Strikers targeting buildings. I mean, this is just always huge if a striker can get in, kill a building, but there's a lot of SAMs in the forest. I mean, there's no way this is going to work. This is looking pretty decent. What is the 1240 income for Haako? 988 for proshelest. So, was it 10 seconds ago I said this is looking decent? Because now I'm starting to get scared. There's a lot of infantry here. And there's nothing proshelest can do on the bottom. That's definitely a barracks we just heard. Yeah, barracks for proshelest. Let's see where Haako's rocket is. Can proshelest see the launch pad? Yes. But probably cannot see the... Well, Haako can't even afford a nuke right now. Nukes cost $500. 500 money. This is a great grouping by Haako, and just like this push in from the north with 2 supporting barracks. Artillery from proshelest is still coming in clutch. Like, let's see what this attack is. Okay, so there's a group of, yeah, here's the SAMs. I mean, picking off the helicopters, that's huge. That's that 9 range on the missiles. And I mean, the artillery is still doing great. That's a lot of tanks in the back for Haako. And these tanks are going to be very annoying. Again, proshelest doesn't have air support, so dealing with tanks like that, very, very difficult. Let's see what Haako does with these tanks. 6 tanks and enough gas to use these tanks. Haako might do very well in this fight. It's a lot of artillery, but we've seen moments where tanks have just rolled through artillery. This is really where the fight is. This is huge. I love this for proshelest. This is the grouping that's needed. That's how to try to push in the north. I mean, that's a lot of infantry, and that's a good amount. You know, like, it's going to be a good trade. This is certainly about to crumble for proshelest, though. Watching the tanks in the middle is specifically a thing that is noteworthy. And it really just, for one thing, it takes all the artillery fire that could be on the infantry, which would, I believe, do much better. And now these artillery are fighting the tanks. No tanks have gone down, or I guess 1 tank has gone down. We said 6 earlier. But that's a whole bunch of artillery. And without air, it's going to be hard to deal with. These tanks are going to destroy everything in the back line, too. It's a great backstab from Haako. 1 SAM, unfortunately, isn't going to be able to do it against 4 helicopters. It nearly got 1. 7 infantry can shoot down a helicopter, so proshelest actually snipes 2, because this is a ton of infantry. And proshelest is going to get 3 helicopters here, I believe. Holy cow, can this one do the last hit? No, it cannot. Tragic. Commandos in the back. This is big, but at this point, the front is crumbling. The tanks are in the back. Very well played from both players. This is a very quick game, but that was very intense. For a second there, I thought proshelest might be able to get on top of the rocket and at least a few of the production buildings. But I guess Haako's production just caught up. I mean, also the reinforcement, like the distance that reinforcements need to travel, obviously defender's advantage exists in this game as like any RTS in general. I guess as proshelest got this far, I mean the reinforcements have to come from here, whereas Haako's, they spawn and they're pretty much in the fight. So GG, we don't see exactly who won, but surely it's Haako. 1,500 income for Haako, and proshelest is out of money. But very well played, both players. Super fun. Thank you. I believe Haako posted this in the Discord and the match replays channel. Props to proshelest. And yeah, thank you so much for watching. I hope you have a great night, day, evening, whatever it is. If you want to catch me on Discord, in the Line War Discord, my name is SodaQuackers. I also stream on Twitch as SodaQuackers. Other folks do too. Drop by, say hello, support the category, follow, whatever it is. Folks, enjoy. We'll see you next time. Have a good one. Peace.